Boom. Hey, welcome back Design Squad, and in this Axure Noob to Master series we're gonna follow up with the challenge we just had the other week where you submitted your amazing submissions. You know, there was a mixture of fidelities. The examples were really cool and very different. In this specific video, what you see already on my screen is what I'm gonna try to do the same and showcase exactly how I would do the same challenge or how I would do the same interactions and make it on the simplest terms in Axure RP. And I have only 3 screens right now in my sketch, as you can see in my canvases, where first scene is basically some sort of maybe social learning. Imagine that it's a social media driven by video. Then we have a recording of the actual person and then submission where you, let's say, can add maybe tags, descriptions, and most importantly we're going to focus on this actual recording so that you know exactly how to simulate, let's say, the selfie or video taking. So without further ado, let's jump into the tutorial itself and let me just actually remake these screens bit by bit in Axure so you know how to do so. As per usual, I'm gonna go into my Axure and quickly set up the canvas, which is gonna be iPhone 8, let's say, and everything here is pretty cool. I think default options are great. First and foremost, let me just go ahead and speed up this process and just set up the first page. And a good thing to know while setting up, I think this is going to be useful for beginner prototyping people. Basically, when porting things, assets to Axure, you need to set up the background elements very first. I mean, it's a no-brainer. But if you see in my mockup, I have so many different elements, and what I start setting up with is the ones which I'm going to keep static, which I don't need to make interactive, like all the menu, titles, logos, backgrounds. As you can see, I have a couple of shades here like that, as well as the titles of the text. So I don't really care about those to make them interactive. What I'm gonna make interactive is these video blocks, basically, or these call to actions for users to answer questions in this specific context. And then I'm gonna start porting them. And now this is where the dilemma is, where you can basically either make these videos a repeater item or just a dynamic panel. It's really up to you how advanced do you want to do it. In my case, I'm just gonna make it a dynamic panel because it's gonna be very flexible and very quick and dirty prototype. And boom, I set up just one item really quickly to preview the progress. As you can see, it's gonna be just a dynamic panel here. There's some issues here when I copied the text field. I need to expand it, obviously, because of the rendering, it just misplaces. Let me really quickly do that. But basically, I'm free now to just duplicate those dynamic panels and just make it like so. Let's say I'm all doing it by eye for a demo purposes, otherwise I would be very pixel specific. And boom, so I set everything up. And so to make this swipeable, what I would do, let's say, I would make it a dynamic panel first and foremost, and I would probably expand it so it's a full width of the stuff, and then inside just go back and readjust it back. And the reason behind it is quite simple, because you want it to be swipeable up until the edge, and so that, let's say, if I swipe these items and it goes away, it actually disappears instead of disappearing, you know, at that padding, at that margin area or edge, right? And so next thing is quite easy. You also want to give the dynamic panel, which is containing it, a name. So it could be something like horizontal shelf 1 container or something like that. And then you're gonna go inside that and also make another container, if you remember from my previous video. So it contains everything in one group. And so it's another dynamic panel, which I'm gonna name vid1 content or something like that. So all the content is gonna be inside it. And the easy bit right now, what's left, is that, let's say on drag, if I add a new interaction to that container bit, new interaction, find thing which is dragged, if you remember from my video, so dragged, and then select move and select what's inside it, which is basically that vid1 content, which is the second panel And with drag, select it to be X because it's on X axis, meaning horizontally. And you can also animate if you want to, I wouldn't. Trajectory, you can add the boundary, how far it should go. But for now, if you want to do all those bits, refer to my previous videos on sliders and draggable elements. It's all covered. I just want to keep it at basic right now. But just to preview and showcase how it would work at the basic level, you're basically, as a user, you're able to drag back and forth. And if you set boundaries, then you can, for example, you can drag out, or you can maybe just drag until here, something like that, to you to define. But refer to my previous videos because it would be too extensive just covering that use case. Besides that, I'm just gonna make this shelf as well draggable, and then we can deep dive into a recording screen. Boom! And so we're ready to do a next state, which is basically recording. I would literally take everything I see on the canvas and convert that to another dynamic panel. It's going to be a dynamic panelception, so to speak. But this is because we basically want to add transitions, right? And in Axure, you can't really transition from page to page because it reloads a page, and it's like a really hard stop, hard start between the pages. Here, we're going to try to simulate more like a mobile specific. So let's say if you want to swipe, the new scene in, or you want it to kind of like fade in or something along those lines, we need to be able to present everything on the same page so it's smooth and the users don't get too discouraged to explore further. Next thing is just really giving the name to your dynamic panel. So it's going to be, let's say, app or something like that. Let's call it very generic. And as you can see, I have empty space up above. So what they want to do is just really adjust the dynamic panel up until the end, and probably just take the content inside and just move it down slightly so it aligns well. And close it. And boom, I have this simple app. Now the state 1 is our landing page, let's say. Landing. State 2 is going to be our recording, right? And we can also add a state 3 if you want to, which is basically just, let's say, publish or something along those lines. Boom. And in the recording, because I duplicated it, it has all that content, but we don't need it. So dump it. And let's go back to our sketch. And right off the bat, I'm just gonna copy these bits bit by bit, but leave out the video. And I'm gonna explain why in a second. Boom. Covered most of the essentials here. As I said, I'm gonna explain exactly why I didn't copy in the video itself. It could be that all you need is really to have just one static image of a face, so it's obviously a selfie. But I would recommend you to go a bit further, and let's say when you click record, it automatically plays a GIF in a loop of people talking. So you can actually tell that it's recording of people talking in. And that you can achieve very simply. How I would do it, at least, I have this selfie video, which I downloaded from one of the stock footage sites. And as you can see, it's MP4 format. Now you could play it in Axure, you could play a YouTube video embed, but it would obviously be a video. What you want is really a bit of a GIF animation type of thing. What I would do next is really just go something like GIF video to GIF converter. Find something simple like this. For example, I'm using onlineconverter.com video to GIF. And so I'm gonna upload the video and it's gonna give me a downloadable GIF.
20 minutes later.
Now, as you can see, I'm downloading this GIF and it's quite large. It's at least 8 megs, so you would want to probably cut that video to a few seconds only so it loops continuously. In this case, for demo's sake, I'm just gonna embed that video as is, but you're gonna see that it's gonna ask automatically if you want to optimize. Nope, let's not optimize. I'm gonna just embed it very quickly. Like so, let's see, so it looks a bit more natural, like a selfie. Send it to back. And now let's say if I go back to my previous stage, just so we test it, and I'm just gonna make everything here clickable for the sake of it. Click or tab. Nope, not open link. We actually need to change the panel state of the app into recording, and then here we can, let's say, slide it to the left or something along those lines, so the content slides from one side to side, like so, let's say. Let's test it out, let's see what happens actually if we do so. As you can see, it plays automatically, so this is already simulating the recording itself, which, you know, we're not really yet activated the recording button, and so it doesn't really make sense that it would. And so we need to go back and probably replace this video, so to speak, with some sort of placeholder, which could be just a screenshot of the face or something along those lines. So let's say what I could do really is just take a screenshot of here, just of a static image, very quickly and very dirty, like so, let's say. As you can see, it's saved in my Mac, and then just keep that video looping in the background. Before we actually click the record button, this image is gonna stay on top of the video, and users are not gonna know that your GIF is playing in the background. They're not gonna care. As you can see, it aligns pretty well. This is a static one, so I'm just gonna actually make it a dynamic panel, or even I don't really probably need to. I can just give it a name, let's say ++ static selfie or something along those lines, and I'm gonna reposition it just under all the objects, but above the actual video here, as you can see in the background. And now if I would preview, it would just display the static image. And next what I'm gonna do is just make this button active, which, as you see, it's red by default, so I can just make dynamic panel out of it and call it, let's say, recording btn, which is recording button. And here the state 1 active would be red actually. State and inactive, let's say, would be white, which would be the default one. I'm just gonna push it up, and here just change the fill to, let's say, white, like so. So until you click on it, it wouldn't start recording, but when you click on it, I'm also gonna make a switch here. So let's say on click, new interaction, on click, set panel state of a trigger. Let me see if I can find that button, recording button, to active, so it becomes red. But also we can hide that static image as well. So I'm gonna find that static selfie and just hide it. Boom. And that's the simplest way to simulate that it's recording. Let's preview so it actually works, because I might be just mumbling the theory, who knows. So let's say I activate that question. Imagine that this is a static thing, and if I click record, it starts playing the video like it should. And now I could also click again, and maybe it would take me to the next scene or so. Before that, what I'm also going to do is make a counter here, so it actually increases from 0. To keep it very, very simple, I might need to split the text fields. For example, these two might be very simple, and this could be just 0, 0. And again, if you want to go in depth, you could go in depth, but I don't think there is even a need. All we are doing is simulating, you know, the different bits. And so I'm just going to count the seconds. I don't think it's going to come to minutes. And if we do, we can cover it in other videos because it's a bit more complicated. But let me just call it, let's say, ++ of a timer. So by default, it's going to be 0. But when we click that bit, it's going to start counting and looping in the numbers. And so what I'm going to do next is literally, we need a variable basically to store that information. And so I'm going to go to project, global variables. If you remember from previous videos, call it, let's say, timer, setting the value of a timer. So it's, let's say, 0. So it's going to start from 0. So next what we can do is just enable cases, click OK. That's the default case, let's say. And then I'm going to also copy a second case, which is going to be our loop. And just delete those bits. We don't really need them. We can basically here say that set text, find the timer, which is differentiated by ++, which is our just a small snippet here, and set it to variable value, which is basically timer, and it's going to be set to 0 by default when we click on it. But I also want to add a logic here that, let's say, if the timer is, I don't know, less than 60 seconds, that loop, and add a new incremental value to it. So let's say value of variable, let's see, if value of variable timer is less than, let's say, 60, which would limit our prototyping a little bit, but that's okay. You know, this is purely for the show. And just toggling if, we set that to value of variable, and then we also gonna do another trick, which is basically set variable value. So we are gonna start that loop, set variable value timer to value, and then in the functions we're going to insert the same exact timer value, but we're gonna add +1. So it's a bit of a tricky situation, but you're gonna see what I mean by that. It's basically it's setting the timer of the text field name into what the variable stores, and then we also add, every time we do that, a +1. So every time it loops, it's gonna keep on adding +1 until it reaches 60. Let me actually test it out, and you're gonna see exactly what's still missing. So if I click share and you see it's 0, I click record, it just set to 0, it didn't loop again. That's where the interesting bit is gonna be. So we're gonna need to fire up an event. We're gonna basically add another action in it and scroll down, and there's a thing called fire event. So find that recording button, and we are gonna fire the click again. And so it's gonna simulate that click happening again and again. You're gonna see what I mean by it, but the only thing what's missing is the, like, you know, because otherwise it's just gonna keep on hammering it non-stop. We also need to add the wait, which could be 1 second, let's say, because we want to increment it by a second, right? So we're gonna say, hey, set these values, add +1, wait 1 minute, 1 millisecond, which is 1 second, fire that event again, and add and keep on hammering until it's up to 60. And let me preview and showcase how awesome that's gonna look like. So we're gonna fire those events, record, and as you can see, it keeps adding the seconds. Now you could also add a 0 in front of it if it's less than 10, let's say, but I'll leave it up to you how to figure out with conditional statements. It's not hard, but you can do whatever you want to. And that's about it for recording. Now we need to figure out how to stop the video and publish it to a next scene, which is basically publish. And so you would want to activate this button, but don't forget that it's being clicked at the moment. So it's really up to you how you want to do it, but how I would do it personally, I would create a secondary bit, which is basically a copy of a dynamic panel, this is a sneaky way to do so. And I'm gonna explain exactly why I'm doing it this, but basically since we with Axure code under the scenes triggering that button again and again and again, it's even if we click it, it's still gonna loop these code snippets we predefined. And so we need to basically say, when you click once, display like a gimmick on top of it, like a pseudo fake bit, like so, for example. And so it's always going to be on top of the actual button which is being clicked, but users are not going to know it. And so I'm going to call it, let's say, gimmick btn. And by default, of course, this is not going to be visible to anyone. But once I click the actual button, let me just delete all the other bits here. Once I click the actual button, I'm gonna say show gimmick, which is gonna overlap our active button, but the active button then is not gonna be clickable because gimmick is gonna be on top of it. And if you click the gimmick button, then it's gonna just transfer us to a scene and leave everything behind. And so this is the simplest way to do so. And so let's say it could be that, I don't know, maybe let's do slide left again. It's up to you what transitions you want to define, but let me demonstrate how this would work. And you're gonna know exactly what I mean. But let's say if I click on that, let's say the camera opens, we start recording, it adds the time. If I stop, you see, it stopped. That's one way to do it. Now what's left for us in this prototype is just to define that last state. And it's really up to you how you want to define. You could make it, let's say, again, that you can play and preview the actual video within this mockup. Let's say, you know, you can use exactly the same methods I used to have a static image over and video under, like a GIF. And then let's say you click the play button, it hides the static and the GIF becomes, you know, accessible, visible, and then it plays loops anyways. And then you can also think of how to submit and share. So if you follow this video and you're doing so, I think you understand that all I would do is maybe just create another state for this, or maybe make a new dynamic panel or replace the existing video ones in my prototype. But this is a very quick overview of how would I approach the things. Again, I planned to do a bit more, but you know, I don't want to spend too much of your time, and I think to give you a best impact, the best explanation of my thinking, my design doing and prototyping, I think that's enough for today. If you have any specific questions, leave them down below. As per usual, like this video if you like this, subscribe, share with your friends. I really appreciate it. You know, it's surprising how great this channel is doing, and that you are actually interested in this high fidelity prototyping, UX, design thinking, tech, product design, everything in between. And so I'm really grateful for you guys. We have already 4,000 of fans who view these videos. And so thanks a lot. And on that note, I'll see you next time.